Well, fair enough. I guess I'm curious what the culture is like with just other comics. I mean, you are largely in a big showcase, going to be, if not the only woman, oftentimes one of the only women. Is that tricky at all?
I usually okay, this is so, I kind of like keep to myself a lot, just because I'm so busy with like the rest of my life, and like comedy is definitely like a big like creative outlet for me. But like, I try to like not get involved in like comedy drama. Like I'll see it, like I'm Facebook friends with everyone, and so like I'll.
Comedy drama is like a whole subsection of humanity I don't get to participate in.
There's too much tea. But yeah, no. So I mean, like I've never been like I felt like the token like chick on a show. Like it's always been like me or like another chick. So maybe I guess like they try to have like a token 2 chicks per show. I always like
hashtag progress.
Yeah, and like I've booked one showcase myself. Like we tried to do a showcase at Giddy Town last month, or not tried to. We did a showcase. It was very good. But I was like, oh, I'll just book like one token cis white guy. Like that'll be fine. And the rest of the comics I booked were comedians, and there's a lot of not a lot of. There's like 3 shows specifically in Austin that are just like all women showcases. I should remember the name. It's like, I think it's called Hear Me Bitch. And then the other one is, it's hosted by Leah Sampson, who is really funny and hilarious, and you should Google her and like find that showcase because I can't remember the name of it.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you what, I'll get that pulled up and make sure to have it in the footnotes for the episode.
Yep.
But I guess I'm curious about. I don't know if I'm missing the boat here, but it feels like Austin has this really interesting and incredible burlesque community, which sort of strangely like bolsters female comedians. Is that, am I getting that right at all?
A little bit. I've definitely noticed there's like some burlesque shows that'll have comedians, and then there are some like burlesque performers that do comedy. So there is an overlap, but I don't even know if that's still like just an Austin thing, because there's like an overlap with like the burlesque scene and Rocky, and then like comedy and Rocky, and then kink and burlesque, and then like comedy and
people who are out, and in a city this big but a town this small, you know, that overlap happens.
Yeah, it's like I get a friend request and I have to like look at my mutuals and be like, okay, what like scene are they in? And like a lot of there's so much overlap, and it's like I think like everyone like that knows me from something different, which is weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's definitely like I feel like there's like the entire performance arts community in Austin is amazing and like really supportive, and just really great and like creative and helping like support everyone, and like really like reach out and support and find each other venues, or be like, oh well, this place is like open to new things, or like this bar is looking for a show. And like that's how I ended up hosting my open mic, was someone like just posted on Facebook like, hey, this bar that I go to like wants to start an open mic, does anyone want to host it?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think
it's about
like
knowing people and hustling and just never saying no.
Yeah, pretty much. I think like almost all of like my comedy opportunities have come from just like people Facebook messaging me, or like just commenting on a post or something.
Hey, that's the way to go, word of mouth.
Yeah. It's pretty great. But yeah, I love the burlesque scene, and the like even like there's a whole wrestling scene that I recently like started, because like there's
I love our small weird city. To anybody watching far afield, I mean, I know we have a huge audience in Europe and places all over the world. Austin is just an incredible place to be.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's actually like how I found out about the wrestling scene, was like a stand-up comedian that I hung out with. He was like, yeah, I'm doing this wrestling show. And then like some of the people from the wrestling show I remember hosted a burlesque show that I went to. And I was, it's just everyone is just like really great and creative.
Well, you said it's like kind of like the whole performance art
type
situation. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking just before the show about just the experience or what it's like to be, I guess, kind of out in these ways or to be performative, to be on a stage, to be, here I am as a therapist, and while we don't necessarily get into like super detailed things, I'm very cognizant of the fact that, somebody who comes into my office might potentially see this show and learn way more than they wanted to about my specific penis, which, I want to model that,
As opposed
comfortable.
to the unspecific way.
Right, like there's a vague concept, like the platonic ideal of a dick, which is very different than my dick. But that being the case, comedy tends to be very, very intimate. And so I'm very curious what it's like to be, talking about bad dates, to be talking about these experiences on stage, and especially in a culture where, women talking about sex, women talking about their bodies, women talking about a lot of the things that has been central to stand-up comedy for so long, what the experience is, what the pushback is.
Oh man, it's wild, and a lot of the pushback is from dudes, like, cause I guess like dudes are like, oh, she's just telling jokes about her pussy, like it's whatever. Am I allowed to swear, right?
Oh yeah, you're goddamn right.
Okay, so like I've definitely like
the rule apparently is just don't talk about your specific pussy. It just has to be, the indefinite, the concept of a pussy. Right. That's the line that we try to draw here.
It's a very like dudes just are real uncomfortable like talking about like vaginas and makeup and stuff, and it's hard, and in a lot of ways I feel like that's shaped my comedy a little bit. Like I'm less reactive to criticism from dudes now, like I can kind of filter it out, but like the first set I remember like not going great was I told it was this terrible joke about like how I like saw a dude do coke in front of me for the first time, and like and I talked about how like I like fancy cheeses from Whole Foods, and I'm not like a cocaine girl. it was admittedly a bad joke and structured very terribly, which is why I'm not going to tell the full joke. But afterwards this dude came up to me and he's like, you shouldn't have so many jokes about how you're so like bougie and girly, and I'm like, oh okay, so like so it's definitely like when you're like 19, 20, like you kind of like listen to that, but now I'm so wise at 22 I can kind of like be like, fuck you, I'm gonna tell this joke about mascara and orgasms. So it's, I don't know, I think you just gotta get better at like filtering out and like understand there's always gonna be dudes who are like critical of like what you're like saying and your thoughts and feelings and stuff, but they at the end of the day like they're not the ones who matter. And like the same thing with like race jokes and stuff. Like I have a lot of jokes about like specifically being a black woman, and I remember like one time like someone came up to me and we were like, I just don't like how you guys like all tell jokes about your race. It's like, we get it, you're of a different race, but you don't have to just like point that out all the time. And I was like, but that's like what makes it funny. It's like, this is my outlet and I'm like sharing my experiences, and like it's part of the creative like and comedy process. So it's like, I feel like if you're not hurting anyone, you should definitely be able to like say whatever you want on stage. And it's hard, especially like having like just that like double overlap of like not only like female jokes but like black jokes and stuff, and it's like the same people who like criticize you openly like making fun of stuff in a lighthearted way are the same people who will probably laugh at like an actual racist joke or like an actual like transphobic joke or something, instead of like someone that like fits that representation like making it funny themselves. So it's kind of like a terrible double standard, but it happens.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear that. And comedy is a field where you are like going through the meat grinder and constantly looking for feedback while also hating it, because it is such a scary thing to do. And to not be able to trust the feedback that you're getting because it is coming from all these different angles. I remember when Dan Harmon was kicked out of Community by NBC and all of the drama that came with that, how one of the biggest frustrations that came from the woman that he had really just been harassing was that even as he was like picking her jokes and complimenting her, it completely ruined her concept for like her own barometer, her ability to tell whether or not she's funny when her boss was coming to her and complimenting and criticizing her sense of humor for these like completely unrelated items.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's kind of, I don't want to make, again, broad assertions, but
Sure.
I feel like it's interesting that you bring that up because that's kind of the experience that I know I've had just in general. Like, okay, you're saying this thing to me, it's a compliment or it's an insult or something. Are you really complimenting me for that? Is there some kind of ulterior motive behind it? Like, are you saying what you mean? So it is definitely a thing, not just in comedy, probably accentuated in comedy for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of used to having that double standard in our head and being like, okay, we have to be careful about how we take this.
Yeah. Is it like, oh, does he just think I'm funny because he's trying to sleep with me? Or like, does he not think I'm funny because he's threatened by me?
Yeah, I mean, how does a conventionally attractive woman have any concept of her own intelligence, of her own sense of humor? These things that we measure through a looking glass self, these things that we can't, measure without hearing feedback from other people, when that feedback is going to be so constantly colored by basically by dicks.
Yeah, no, that's like, really enough, like, I just, like, only trust, like, my straight chick friends and, like, my dude friends that are already, like, married. So, like that's it.
If sex is off the table, then you start to bring it in.
Yeah.
Okay.